Hey everybody, we're here at Red Rocks Racing Sportsbook. He's Jason, I'm Chucky for the Sports Betting Podcast Bookends, powered by STN Sports. And I know we took a little bit of a hiatus after that big football game in early February, but we're back and we're going to start by talking some football. It's 50 days, exactly 50 days from the pro football draft. The combine just finished. We've seen a lot of guys move kind of up and down the draft board. We know the top looks like it's going to be quarterback. Maybe it's quarterback. But there's some free agent questions that have to be answered before that, Jay. So I think the guy that everyone's kind of looking at right now, and the Broncos have given him permission to talk to other teams, is Russell Wilson. The Broncos gave up a bounty to Seattle. The draft picks, the players, gave him a big contract. And Sean Payton is basically saying, I'm good with paying this guy. We just have to move on. Is there a team or a fit that maybe Russell Wilson would move the needle for? I know we talked about it a little bit off air. To me, the only team is maybe the Steelers. I think you look at that division, and at 50-1, they were kind of that vogue team last year, but you've got the Browns at 30-1, the Bengals at 12-1, the Ravens at 9-1, all to win the Super Bowl, and the Steelers at 50-1. Really good defense, good skill position players on offense with Pickens, Deontay Johnson. You've got good running backs there. So could Russell Wilson move the needle there, or does he move it anywhere at this stage of his career?
Well, talk about him moving the needle, and what does Russell Wilson have left in his game to bring to an NFL franchise? It seems like there's been a declining skill set over the last couple of years in Denver, and maybe that's why Denver's willing to move on. I think he does find a job in the fact that we see
I do too,
a plethora of jobs available. We see how quarterbacks are going down. Heck, we saw Joe Flacco revive his career and win comeback player of the year after sitting on his couch and not even having a team to play for and being invited to a camp. So I do think Russell Wilson will find a home, especially at the price tag, where he can sign a pretty non-lucrative deal for the team because he's getting paid so much money by the Broncos. So maybe a team can steal him. But I don't. For me, on the field, I think we've seen the best of Russell Wilson in the past. I don't know that from an odds standpoint, him going anywhere, even to a team like the Steelers, would make me say, oh, we need to lower them or take them from 50-1 down to 45-1 or down to 40-1. I would actually say
like 50 to 49.
If you're going to depend on Russell Wilson to be your starting quarterback, I don't know that I would go down in odds or that it would lead me to believe that you just made your team worse, and that potentially the off the field issues that we saw in Denver of what he needed, kind of the specialization around him. Is he still a good teammate? Do the guys want to play for him and back him? All those questions kind of come with Russell Wilson.
I think for me, the only team that stood out was Pittsburgh. I know it's been rumored that maybe a backup job with the Jets, maybe the Raiders, but he's playing in the same division then with Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert. I don't know if he's a good fit there. I just thought Pittsburgh, because it's Mike Tomlin, and Tomlin is such a good coach, arguably one of the top coaches in the league. Not just my opinion, but I think everybody's opinion. He's such a good motivator. They've got a very talented defense, good skill position players around him with offense. He's not going to have to go there and win it himself. That was the only team that kind of jumped off the page to me. Like, I have no idea now. I've heard conflicting reports that the Steelers were interested. Now they're no longer interested. But I guess a lot depends on where Justin Fields goes, what happens with the draft, with 5 quarterbacks potentially going now in the top 12, with J.J. McCarthy maybe being the 4th quarterback taken, or at least in the top 10, Bo Nix in the top 12, maybe to Denver as kind of that Drew Brees type quarterback. So I'm not sure
you
where
talked
the market
about
is.
The landscape, and it's whence the dominoes begin to fall. We talked about the Cousins deal and what's going to happen there. Are the Vikings going to give him that $35 to $45 million that Cousins is probably going to command? The Falcons have been rumored to be going after Cousins. Tampa Bay has got a chance to. They didn't franchise tag Baker Mayfield. It would have been like a $38 million number. Expect that Mayfield should be getting somewhere between that $25-35 million. You've got guys like Minshew, Flacco, a bunch of Tannehill. You got a bunch of other guys that are out there that are on the cusp of outside of Cousins that are starting quarterbacks.
Right.
Are they backups? Are they starters? You talk about Justin Fields, and we're gonna exhaust that to death over the next you said 50 days until draft day, or hopefully it's not that long, and the Bears can make a decision.
Less than a week till free
do.
agency starts, and I think that's really a key component as well. If you're the Vikings and Kirk Cousins, I mean, he's thrown for over 4,000 yards there 3 times. He probably would have done it again this year if he doesn't get hurt. I think if you're Cousins too, realistically, you have to look, what's my best fit? I mean, he's got Jefferson there, and Jordan Addison. He's got a familiarity in that system of Kevin O'Connell. I think he goes back to Minnesota. Atlanta, with good skill position players there too. If it's London, if it's Robinson, if it's Pitts, and a good defense there with Morris as the head coach, I think he has some success there. But if he ends up going to Atlanta, what happens to Justin Fields? That's kind of the team that everyone is kind of rumored to be. He's going to go to Atlanta. He's going to go home. They've got the defense, the skill set. If he goes there, Cousins, I'm not sure where Justin Fields goes at that point.
Well, I still think you're talking about these teams that need quarterbacks in Washington, New England, Atlanta, Denver, the Raiders. I mean, there's a lot of teams looking for that number one starter and willing to pull the trigger. So I think, again, big monster landscape of quarterbacks to be able to look at here, and I think the dominoes begin to fall when we start to say, what is Cousins doing? What are the Bears doing with Fields? And then we start to ask ourselves, what happens in this draft? You made mention to it of picks 1, 2, 3, and 4. Do teams trade up? Is Caleb Williams that coveted piece that teams really want? Do the Bears want him, or can they live with May or Daniels?
I don't think anybody's going to give them that bounty to move up. I mean, they moved out of the number 1 spot last year, and in retrospect, they fleeced the Panthers for what they got in return, getting the number 1 pick this year the way it worked out. But I don't think anybody is going to give them that bounty. Maybe Washington, because Williams is from the D.C. area. They flip picks, and the Bears get some more assets, but I'm predicting the Bears end up going all in on Caleb Williams.
The other big name, as we got done with the combine, J.J. McCarthy, has really kind of moved up the draft board. Was kind of predicted that he would maybe fall in that 12 or 13 range to the Broncos or Raiders, be a first-round pick. But after the combine, he's kind of been leaking up into even closer picks down to 5, 7, 8 that teams might have to move up out of that 12 and 13 spot to draft McCarthy behind May and Daniels. I think he's still behind those 3 guys as the 4th quarterback selected, but he's been moving up the draft boards to where probably can't fall to the Raiders at 13.
Yeah, I'm not sure hasn't surpassed some of those guys right now. He was the only one of that bunch who did everything at the combine. His measurables, he was bigger than what they thought he would be, and just a great kid. He interviewed really, really well. And I think he's got an opportunity. And I heard, one of these scouts kind of say is that if you're able to play with Jim Harbaugh for 2 years and only lose 1 game, because he's a tough coach. He's not an easy guy to play for, that he should have success at the next level. So I think there's a real chance that he goes in the top 10. And is it a team like Atlanta? Do the Broncos? Do the Giants? Does anybody move up to potentially maybe grab him in that number 5 spot where the Chargers sit right now? That would kind of cause the draft to be a little bit chaotic, I think, with 4 quarterbacks going in the top 5 or 6.
Well, it'll mess with some of the receivers, and we saw
a lot of mocks.
Xavier Worthy, run that 4.2 140 at the combine, breaking the combine.
And who was
record.
rooting him on? J.J.
McCarthy was the first guy there cheering him on. So you're getting a guy that's a good teammate and a good team player. And I know the other thing we wanted to kind of talk about was the number of free agent running backs that we're going to have, and kind of some of the superstar studs on this list of running backs in Josh Jacobs, Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, some really big names of guys that are out there in the free agent market from a running back standpoint. We saw them get franchise tag last year, Barkley the big case, and Jacobs, and that running back market has kind of been in that $10 million range for those top guys. And then you have a bunch of guys like the Zach Moss, and those guys that are a little bit further down the charts that are going to get in that kind of $4.4 to $5 million range on the free agent market. But a laundry list of kind of 10 running backs.
I wonder with, kind of sleeper teams maybe that aren't getting that ink right now. To me, it's Baltimore and Philadelphia. 2 teams that really like to run the ball a lot, even though they've got talented quarterbacks and good defenses. Is Derrick Henry or Saquon Barkley a fit for one of those two teams that maybe it gets them over the top of.
Yeah, and you talked about Eckler. Tony Pollard is also out there. DeAndre Swift, who would be leaving Philadelphia if they don't re-sign him. And again, all those guys are somewhere in that probably $4 to $7 million signing range, to get those type of guys. But then there's, like I said, Moss.
But what does Henry have like in the tank at this point, just based on his age? I mean, one of the best running backs we've seen.
Well, but maybe
ever.
maybe you're not expecting him to be a full-time running back, and we've talked about this to exhaustion, but it's very rare to see the number one back in this day and age anymore. We saw McCaffrey and some of these other guys that can do it, but you really need a two-headed monster. And then when we see and talk about the injuries as you go through the NFL season and the guys getting banged up, it's really important to have that, we'll call it 1A, 1B type running back, to where you could use Derrick Henry to be that big goal line back, pounding type back when you catch a lead. And there's still guys out there like A.J. Dillon, J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards. So there's a lot of pieces of the puzzle that are still available from a running back standpoint, let alone in the NFL draft, the number of running backs that we potentially could see
and
coming
it's not
out of the
first
draft.
round. I mean, you think about a decade ago where running backs were so coveted early in the draft, where you really don't see that anymore. I mean, there's probably not going to be a running back that goes in the first round of this year's draft. So I think these free agent guys would be coveted a bit. I still think there's going to be a market for Saquon Barkley. I think there's going to be several teams that are in on him, hoping that he can be kind of that difference maker. I know the Bears have been one of the teams that have been talked about, is that if you do draft Caleb Williams, what's a young quarterback's best friend? A good running back. And would he be a fit there? Would he be a fit in Baltimore, Philadelphia? But I think he's going to be probably the most coveted of that free agent bunch. Let's talk about the Eagles a little bit. We know that they really faltered down the stretch last year, seemed to have a lot of internal problems. A.J. Brown on and off the field, meaning in the locker room. Sirianni seemed to lose control of that team somewhat. Already rumblings that if the Eagles really struggle this year, there's a certain coach with a bunch of rings that doesn't have a job right now that could be a candidate in Philadelphia. But they lose Jason Kelce to retirement. What is that impact going to have both on and off the field? I mean, you lose that leader, that kind of guy that could maybe pull this young team together and some of these personalities. I think it's a big loss both on and off the field for the Eagles.
Yeah, the question was posed is what does it mean to that Eagles locker room? And obviously his veteran leadership, his relaxed style, his way of calming the guys down, clearly going to be lost in Philadelphia. And we saw it in his retirement speech, and we've kind of seen it as he's kind of come into light with the podcast that him and Travis do, and obviously Travis and Taylor Swift and everything that's been encompassed. And but he's really a unique and dynamic player, and obviously brought that to the locker room and was able to kind of bring that family atmosphere to Philadelphia. But I think the biggest change in losing Jason Kelce is the question: will the push tush still work? They were thinking about banning the push tush. The NFL said no. The Eagles do it better than anybody else. If it was everybody working it, we'd get rid of it. The Eagles were at like a 93% clip on the push tush. They converted fourth downs at something like a 75% clip. They had the most first downs in the league on third and fourth down in short yardage situations. So for me, it's can the Eagles continue to be the push tush champions when they lose the big tush that's in the front of that line leading the push tush. So it'll be interesting
That's been a nickname that he's been called before, but I kind of like it though.
As we go into next year, I think it'll be interesting to see those first several games into the effectiveness of the tush push and how the Eagles do it without Kelce.
Well, I think there's just a lot of pressure on the Eagles overall. I mean, if you went through like the first 10 or 11 games of the season last year, I mean, when we looked at our Super Bowl future book odds, the AFC, NFC prop, it was all based on the Eagles being that team in the AFC, and they really collapsed down the stretch. They were not that same team, seemed to have a lot of problems both on and off the field. So we'll see without Kelce what ultimately that means. But it's going to be really interesting in pro football with the draft and free agency on the horizon. I think there's going to be a lot of movement up and down with trades and the draft board, and we'll see ultimately where Justin Fields goes, Kirk Cousins goes, and a host of these other players that we mentioned.
Yeah, so what that means is you should get into the future book and kind of take your crystal ball and see if you can figure out what's going to happen with the draft and where these quarterbacks are going to go, and look for some value on those teams in the future book.
All right, let's jump now to hockey, and their trade their trade deadline is coming up as well. And the Knights were kind of in a similar situation last year before they kind of got hot. Maybe not quite They're the sixth team in the West right now, so maybe not quite that far down the list. But they've got Mark Stone on long-term IR, which kind of frees up a little salary. You can kind of manipulate the salary a little bit in the NHL with that. They just made a trade for Anthony Matha, who's got 20 goals and 14 assists, add some punch offensively. They're starting to get a little bit healthier with Jack Eichel coming back now, but you've already seen a lot of trades over the last 24 hours. You've seen the Avalanche engage in a couple of trades. Tarasenko moved. The Knights now engaging in a trade. I think it's going to be a feverish pace for the NHL trade deadline.
Well, I mean, we'll address the Knights and acquiring Mantha, and you kind of made mention to it. Kind of similar at the same time last year. They put Stone on the line, long-term IR, and they got Barbashev, and Barbashev was a key kind of down the stretch, and then was a big role player come playoff time, had key goals, key assists, and then they signed him to the big deal and the 5-year deal, and now you kind of look at this same type player in Mantha, who's a top 6 forward, right winger. Coincidentally, Stone put back on the IR, which frees up the cap space. Mantha, they get a great deal.
Right?
They get a great deal in Mantha, and that the Caps are still picking up 50% of the salary, so they'll still have about $4.4 million or so to continue to look to make some deals at this trade deadline. And Mantha is an absolute monster. The guy, he's 6'5", 235 pounds, so he's going to look absolutely giant on the ice. He's going to probably end up skating on that second or third line. He'll probably have some power play opportunities, but he can be a key piece of the puzzle. You look at what Barbashev did last year. I think Mantha can do the same for them this year. And the Knights, make no mistake, they've been really struggling here in the last 2 weeks. I think they're 2-8 in their last 10 games. They've had some embarrassing losses, allowing 7 goals multiple times, I think, to the Sabres and to the Leafs, and an embarrassing loss to Columbus. So Mantha's got to get into the lineup quickly and get combined. And you talked about it, Eichel coming back. The guys are coming back, so they're starting to get a little bit healthier.
Goaltending needs to get better.
Yes,
though.
But again, are those guys healthy? Are Thompson and Hill really playing healthy, or are they playing banged up? And so again, the key to this Knights, much like we saw last season, is getting everybody healthy, getting everybody back on the ice, and they're kind of starting to get around to that. So we'll see what they can kind of do over these next 2 weeks. But I think Mantha is a great acquisition. McCrimmon, a great job in going out and getting him.
I don't think they're done, though. I think they'll go out and get another player now. I think with Stone on long-term IR, it really frees up a little bit more money that they can go out and make another move. And we've seen, a lot of those top teams. The Avalanche have made a couple of trades. The Oilers have made a trade. The Panthers picking up Tarasenko. So there's already been a lot of movement with still a few days left before the trade deadline.
Well, and Mantha, a good move. But if the Mantha move, if you're grading that an A for McCrimmon and the Golden Knights, I'll give the Florida Panthers an A+, and I'll give them 5 extra credit points for going and getting Tarasenko. An absolutely fantastic move for the Panthers. The Panthers are now the best team in hockey.
Yep.
They have 90 points. They're sitting at first place in the East. This is obviously the team that the Knights beat in the Cup last year, so they've got a chip on their shoulder coming back. They're still going to have to, get through a tough East conference playoffs. But acquiring Tarasenko, who won the Stanley Cup with the Blues in 2019, is an exceptional leader. Again, still a top 6 forward that you add to those guys that Florida already has. This is a guy that's got veteran playoff experience. He's probably played close to 100 playoff games in his career. Obviously, he wasn't going anywhere with Ottawa. So this is a big, big add for the Florida Panthers, who, like I said, are already the first number 1 team in the NHL as we sit here today.
And you have Colorado that's getting a little healthier as well. They made a couple of moves, and then the Oilers already have made a move. So I think you're going to look at those top teams. I think a team like on the cusp, the Devils, who are looking at maybe making a goaltending move. Do the Oilers make a move at goaltending? There's going to be a lot of movement in the next 48 hours.
The other one for me, you talk about the Knights. They're sitting 4th in the Pacific, behind Vancouver, Edmonton, and the Kings. Maybe they're tied with the Kings, 3rd and 4th.
They're 6th overall in the West.
In the Central is Dallas. Dallas, the number 1 team in the Central. They just got Chris Tanev from the Calgary Flames. Again, a veteran defensive guy. Kind of where Dallas needs the help is on that back-end defense to kind of short things up there. They've been playing a lot of guys short minutes, so I think that's another big move. I would give Dallas an A for going and getting Tanev from the Flames.
I think a lot of these teams are going to score high. It's just what do they give up in those deals? And that's, to me, the real question mark. You've seen the trade that Edmonton made. They gave up a lot right now to get Henry from Anaheim. They gave up a lot in that deal. They gave up a number 1. So there's a lot of parity in the league right now and a lot of shuffling of teams' playoff position, but I think there's going to be a lot of movement come trade deadline time.
Yep.
So we've touched on the NFL, NHL. Let's jump over to baseball. We're getting ready for baseball to start. We've got a big league weekend coming up here right in our backyard. A's, Brewers. And it's always fun. We went to a couple of minor league baseball games a couple of college baseball games last week at the ballpark. It was a lot of fun. I mean, the atmosphere there is great. It's a beautiful stadium, and when the wind's blowing out, make sure you bet the over. But big league weekend, I think, does, for us, it kind of signifies the start of baseball season. We've got these games coming up in Korea with the A's and Dodgers, but big league weekend's always a lot of fun.
Yeah, you talked about the Las Vegas ballpark right across the street here from the beautiful Red Rock Casino Resort, and the stadium's absolutely fantastic. Very enjoyable time to get out there, and we'll host the Brewers and A's. And you talked about those over-unders. We got to watch some college baseball this past weekend where we saw Oklahoma and Pittsburgh play in a total that was 18.5, and I think we saw 27 runs before the game was called
at 7 innings,
mercy rule
right.
in the 7th inning. So when that wind's blowing out, those guys like to hit in that ballpark. And if we talk about the A's end up coming here and playing some games here, and what would that do to totals at the would we see Major League Baseball totals in the 20s or high teens? We talk about Colorado where we see 12.5s, 13.5s.
You might see the highest totals when the wind's
we would see
blowing
some
out.
pretty high totals here at the ballpark. And for those of you that are doing your fantasy drafts, if the A's ever get to play their home games here, you might have to take where you're not drafting any of those A's guys and launch those A's players up the fantasy draft board to be able to get them with the home run prowess here at the Las Vegas ballpark.
It is a lot of fun. I mean, we really had a good time going out there, and it's right adjacent to Red Rock. It's just such a beautiful ballpark that it was fun going out there. And I think now is such a great time with the college basketball tournament, which we didn't even talk about this week. Conference tournaments actually start next week. The big dance isn't that far away. Baseball going on. All these other things going on right now that it's such a great time to get the app. It really is. And there's kind of a cool new feature that I'm going to let you jump into and explain. That's the match of the day.
Yeah, so again, we moved to the new app, and we promised you that we're going to have some great new features that we're introducing, and so we're throwing the first one out there as the match of the day. It's essentially a 10%.
It's like throwing the first pitch, right?
It's like a 10%. It's a 10% odds boost in the match of the day, up to $50. So essentially, the easiest way to explain it is if the Milwaukee Bucks are -4, minus $1.10, and you bet $550, instead of the $550 winning you $500, the $550 is going to win you $550 because you're taking the -110 and you're essentially taking 10% off, getting it at even money. Or if the Golden Knights are a $1.30 favorite, if you bet the Golden Knights, you're going to essentially get them at $1.20 for up to $50. So again, you'll see it. It's bold. It's super easy to find. Bright pink. Match of the day. Take advantage of it. Is essentially giving you a free juice or a 10% boost on the odds.
It's kind of a cool feature, and I know, as Jay mentioned, we've talked about this. There's going to be more and more things that we introduce over the course of the year, but it's such a great time to have the app right now because there's so many things going on. I know we've kind of talked about it and put that teaser out there. The Combine ended on Sunday. We'll definitely be putting up some Pro Football Draft props as well, so look out for those. Just a lot of stuff to wager on right now.
Yeah, you talked about the conference tournaments from a college basketball standpoint. We actually have a lot of the smaller conference tournaments starting this week that'll lead up to obviously the big tournaments as we go to Selection Sunday on March 17th, and then the kickoff of the big tournament on March 21st. And with that comes Last Man Standing, our college basketball contest. We've gone back out with the $50,000 guarantee. So for $25 an entry, buy 4, get a 5th entry free. So for $100, you get 5 entries. Pick winners beginning that Thursday. You pick a winner, you advance to Friday. You pick a winner Friday, advance to Saturday, so forth. Be that last man standing. $50,000 guarantee. If we collect more than that, all the prize money will be returned to the contestants. So get in. You can sign up now for last man standing.
Not only that, is that there's 5 college basketball conference tournaments in Vegas. So it's the pre-match or the pre-game wagering. It's the live wagering. It's just a great time to have the app. And shout out to UNLV, who came off a big win against San Diego State. I know you were at the game, and they're 7-2 against ranked teams right now. The tournament's out here. We always generate so much more action on these events and tournaments and games that are out here in Vegas. It's going to be fun to watch the Mountain West tournament.
Yeah, and I got a chance to go to the San Diego State UNLV game. Absolutely fantastic atmosphere. Senior night, UNLV pulled out the win over San Diego State. It really leads to some interesting questions about the Mountain West.
They're a very good conference. conference this year.
We've been so down on the Mountain
Right.
West for so many years in that they weren't winning their tournament games. They're projected right now to have 6 teams in the tournament. That's without UNLV, and UNLV is really not on the roadmap. They're still not getting themselves into that last 4 out or last 8 out.
They should be, in my opinion.
Yeah, the RPI of 60, I think they're right there. They've got 1 game left against the Wolfpack, who are obviously way up in the RPI. They're on an
who they led almost the entire game.
I think they're
when they
9-1 in their
game,
last 10, with the only loss coming to the Wolfpack
Right.
in a game that you talked about that they blew a pretty decent lead. If they're able to win that game and then have a good showing in the conference tournament, they're absolutely going to have a great showing in the conference tournament. They might have to end up making the championship game or winning it
right.
to get in. But I really am surprised that they're not at least leaking themselves into that last 4 out conversation, because they really have played well down the
stretch. They've got a signature win against Creighton this year, and they're 7-2 against ranked teams, which I think is an impressive resume. What hurts UNLV is the bad losses. The loss to Air Force by 34 points, and some other Wyoming really bad losses on the schedule that have hurt them.
Yeah, Deion Thomas has been fantastic. The Boone brothers, they've been really playing some good ball. Luis Rodriguez. So they're an exciting team to watch, and we'll hope good things down the stretch here. Hopefully they can get a win over the Wolfpack and then have a good showing in the conference tournament. And maybe we have that outside chance. Hopefully,
It'd be great.
In these smaller conference tournaments, they need the teams to not falter.
Right.
They need the Daytons to not lose the A10 and then let other teams kind of get in from the other conferences, which kind of knocks the big boys off those bubbles as the diaper dandies kind of get in. But again, I got my March groove starting to get together. I'm really excited about the tournament.
We'll be doing our best to help you with your brackets and really diving into the tournament in the next couple of weeks, kind of going through everything. I think there's so many schools that are so good right now that you can go 15 or 20 deep, where usually you're talking about maybe 5 to 8 or 10 teams that realistically can win it. I think there's more than that going into the tournament this year.
Super excited about the tournament. The other thing I'm excited about is the kind of stretch here as we get towards the Kentucky Derby. A lot of Kentucky Derby prep races coming up as we hit March. And just look at the calendar throughout March and in early April. We see those 3-year-olds that are going to be running in the Kentucky Derby. On your app now, you don't have to have a sports account and a race account. You've got them both in one wallet. So anytime you want to look over and look at what's going on from that day's racing, click over to the racing tab. Horse racing is available to you at all times now on the app. So get ready to play these Kentucky Derby prep races leading up to that first Saturday in May 4th to bet the Kentucky Derby.
And a couple of teasers for race. I'm not going to go any further than that, but we'll be letting you guys know real soon about a couple of kind of cool things we're going to do for race in the Kentucky Derby. So it's always great to catch up. I know we've talked about it for a few weeks leading up to the Combine, but hopefully next week we'll have a slew of props for the NFL draft up on the board. We've been kind of a leader in that over the last several years. We want to get out front with that. We're both kind of draft nicks and being Bear fans, but them having the number 1 pick is going to be a lot of fun to work on some of these props this year. So for Jason, I'm Chucky. We're at Red Rocks Racing Sportsbook for the Sports Betting Podcast Bookends, again, powered by STN Sports. We'll see you guys next week.